Good evening. Welcome everybody to the June 22nd, 2017 meeting of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll start by asking everybody to silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so, and by introducing the board left to right. First in line is Jerry Thomas. He's an associate member of the board. Next is Ken Foreman. He's the vice chairman of the board. I'm Kimberly Beelan. I'm the chairman of the board. Next in line is TJ Hurry. He's the clerk of the board. Ed Van Kuren is next in line. He's a regular voting member, followed by Paul Murphy, who's also a regular voting member, and Robert Dugan, who's an associate member. Sri Budro is our zoning administrator, and Drade Geishecker is our recording secretary. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town and considering requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's Office for the Commonwealth. Decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public and allow full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. Tonight we just have 2 open meeting matters and 1 continuation, and Attorney Clower knows the procedure, so I don't think that we need to waste any more time on that. So the first item on the agenda, I think we're going to take these out of order. If I have a motion to that effect.
Madam Chair, I would like to make the motion to take application 25-17 out of order.
Second.
Okay, so that was TJ and Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. And so that's application 2517. Bogosian Development will be first. And just to remind the public, myself, Ken Foreman, TJ, Ed Van Kuren, and Jerry Thomas are the voting members on this. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I'm an attorney here in Falmouth. This is a continuation of a matter that was begun some 3 weeks ago and had been continued to last week's hearing, but pushed back till tonight. In that meantime, we had submitted a letter seeking to address many of the questions the board had presented. Most specifically, that letter, along with that letter, we submitted a revised architectural plan to show the correct first floor seating layout of the potential restaurant, as well as revised commercial site plans in order to reflect the parking changes that the board had required, most specifically to move 4 of the residential spaces to the front lot, so to speak, and reserve those for tenants of those units. We also sought to address some of the questions that came up. We did talk about the parking reduction. This project would conceptually require 27 parking spaces. We've asked for a reduction to 24 parking spaces. As this is located in the Business Redevelopment District, the stated goal of which is to integrate mixed-use development with housing, allowing for shared parking and parking reductions. Section 240-240J1A allows the special permit granting authority, in this case this board, to reduce parking requirements when uses are complementary, and actually allows for reductions of up to 50%. What we're asking for is a reduction of 11% of 3 spaces. As I mentioned, the potential office and restaurant and residential uses would require 27 spaces. If that restaurant were in fact office space, it would require 23 spaces, and if it was retail, it would require 24. So given the particular needs of this site and the fact that the parking would otherwise be conforming, we think that this reduction is appropriate and in line with what's envisioned by the zoning bylaw. I also sought to address Ken's concerns regarding the density, which was outlined pretty thoroughly in the letter. I don't feel the need to rehash it, but would be happy to address any questions the board may have. Otherwise, I think that was all the outstanding issues. And again, I'd be happy to address any questions, and that's all we have for the moment.
Okay. Let me see if anybody has any questions for you. Jerry, any questions?
I understand the wastewater superintendent essentially said you didn't have to tie in the 2 houses on Nye Road.
That's correct.
At this time?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's it?
That's it.
Ken?
Nothing right now.
TJ?
No questions.
No, nothing.
Paul? do you
No,
have
thanks.
anything? Sari, do you have any questions? No. I might have asked this last time, Kevin, but was there any consideration given to alternative parking rather than asphalt?
There was, and we did discuss this last time. Ultimately, the concern became maintenance, ongoing maintenance, plowing, issues of that nature. And given the fact that the rear lot's really going to be servicing, ideally, the residents, we thought that asphalt was the best use in that situation.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I had. Let me see if anybody from the public would like to speak. Is anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how would the board like to proceed? Do we want to just have a quick discussion or any discussion? I think last time we had a lot of questions, and they were addressed certainly by Attorney Clower's submission. Does anybody else want to speak? No?
I mean, I think one of the things for the impervious pavement, if they're containing all runoff on the site, it achieves the same goal.
Right, yeah. That's true. That's a good finding, Jerry, and condition. Anything else, TJ? Ed?
No, nothing else.
Ken? No? Okay, well, we're not feeling talkative. So, works here, I mean. All right, so is there a motion to close the
I
public?
make the motion to close.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so that's Ed and Ken. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then, I do just want to say before we, I guess, take a vote, I think this project is an appropriate one for the site. We've had other proposals for the same property, and I think the applicant has done a good job of considering the business redevelopment district, the purpose of that district, maintaining those dwellings in the back, in the rear, which I think is certainly sensitive to the other properties on Nye Road. So I think it's really a good project. I also think in terms of reduction of the number of parking spaces, as Attorney Clower explained, if they have a restaurant, they need 27. It's an 11% reduction, which certainly I think is minimal, and they may not even need that many. So, and they also addressed our concern about resident parking, and they're going to set aside those reserved spaces. So I think it looks good. I think it's what this district was intended for. So it's a nice project. So would anybody like to make a motion or to approve or?
Make a motion.
The hearing's closed, right?
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay, so that's Jerry and Ed, and then findings and conditions. This was so much pressure last week. TJ, you're reviewing the meeting minutes. That might be helpful. What about some findings? So finding is that it's certainly appropriate for the business redevelopment district, mixed use of office space or proposed office and restaurant space and residential space, that they're maintaining the dwellings in the rear. And I think the testimony was, if I recall, that existing tenants in those buildings will be staying, which I think is nice, if I recall, or that was what was testified. That there's going to be 4 reserved spaces for residents adjacent to the new building in the front.
Wastewater superintendent determined the houses formerly on Nye Road don't have to connect at this time.
Until it fails.
Yes.
Well, I wasn't sure. That's what I would have interpreted to be, but
And I spoke with Amy before you sent the email, and her response to me is in the file as well as Jerry's, but because they were not on Main Street, and this is through a merging of properties, they can maintain those until they fail, and then they will
Will
most
tie in.
likely be required to hook up.
Okay. Jerry did take note that stormwater will be contained on site. We'll make that a finding. That they're
reduction in parking is reasonable?
Yes, I think that's,
What?
is it reasonable, reduction of parking?
I've got that.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
reasonable, I
11%.
think, 11%. And I think maybe we will massage that when we're writing the decision to take note of what Attorney Clower said, that what they're proposing is this kind of maximum use of the space, and they may actually need less, depending on the uses that go in there.
Would you like that in the findings?
Yes, yeah.
I think we were happy with landscaping and things like that.
Yeah.
Lighting.
Yep, yeah, we did discuss lighting and landscaping.
Maybe screening for the residences out there.
Yeah, that's a good finding as well.
What was that?
Screening for the residences to the rear.
Basically, as per the plan.
As,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else, Ray, that you can?
No, I'll put it in for 240, 216.
216. So is that it on findings? I think. Conditions per plans? That if, I guess, how do we word this? Some condition as to the uses. So when, can we require them to
Well-
submit?
Well, that's just it. I mean, they're proposing a restaurant and office space,
Mhm.
but it may not turn out to be that way.
Right,
As long as, I think you should make a condition that it is, if it's an allowed use in the BR zoning as a by right, then that's fine.
yes.
Do you want to go with that, or do you want him to notify us? How do you want to do that? I don't think it requires a modification.
No, I don't either. But what if they were to put in a bigger restaurant or something? I mean, then they would have to come back, so we should,
Any change, if a restaurant goes in, then any
Yes.
change of the proposed seating needs to come to you for minimum administrative review.
yes. So does our decision provide that? Or is that just?
You can condition
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So let's condition that.
So change in seating if restaurant,
Yeah. That will impact or may impact the.
no, I don't think you should do that because that's too discretionary. Change in seating, if different than what's proposed, requires administrative review by the board.
If greater than what's proposed. Increase more than 22, however you want to say.
If greater than proposed, okay.
Good. Is it appropriate to say they will have signs marking residential parking only? How would people know? You know,
Yeah, that's I think per plan, because it says they're noted as reserved. Actually, that's a good question. Is it, Kevin, is it signage or is it just marked on the pavement?
I think we'd probably do signage.
I would think
that's
that'd be
the-
better myself.
I think it's the
I think
clearest.
you should require.
I think we
Yeah.
should require that as well. Thank you.
And if the residents of that property, I mean, you say residents, someone might say I'm a resident of Falmouth, so I can park in.
Residents of building.
The building, that's fair.
You can put residents of 530, whatever it is, whatever the address is.
Okay.
And make sure you put residents, because you don't want employees parking in those spots.
unless
What is the
they're
address?
Yeah,
587.
a resident.
Yeah, that's true too. So is that everything, do you think, per plans?
Outside of any deviation or change, we'll
Right.
put that in there.
Yes. Teacher, did you see?
Did you want to put,
Did we want to put,
never mind, that was a finding.
okay.
It's up to the board, I can't think anymore.
I mean, I
Sorry.
think, yeah, the plans look good and I think it's good. All right, so it was Jerry's motion to grant and Ed seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None, so that's unanimous. Thank you. So, sorry, do we need a motion to
You
take
need a
open
motion to
meeting
go
stuff out of?
into an
Yeah.
open meeting, and then from the open meeting into executive session. and
To
you-
take it out of order, or just to go into executive session?
Aren't we in open meeting now?
You need to make a vote to go into an open meeting. You're not
All right.
out of order.
Madam Chair, I would like to make the motion to go into open meeting.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Now you
Okay.
have to address the crowd.
So that's, that's right. So we're going to be going into open meeting to enter into executive session pursuant to Chapter 40A, or excuse me, 30A, Section 21A3 of the open meeting law to discuss litigation regarding certain matters. I guess like the Climate Foundation at 3 Little Harbor Road, and Duclos, 198 Thomas B. Landers Road. And if we, I think, isn't there something about, there's some other magic language I'm supposed to say.
It's in
To
there.
not go into executive session could compromise the litigation status.
Yes.
To not go into executive session could compromise the litigation status of those matters. So what that means is that we'll take the roll call to, or do I wait, roll call to
You
go
need
in, and then everybody will have to leave the room except for Attorney Harris. Is how that
But you can
works.
come back later.
Yes, yeah, we will be
Why are you switching it?
because we have the discretion to do so, and we've decided that that's,
Because we didn't want to make the attorney.
Liberty
wait.
Green is going to be heard, it's just that it's going to take longer, so we're trying to get this out of the way so we can focus completely on Liberty Green.
Exactly.
okay. All right, so it was TJ who made the motion and Ed seconded it. And so Jerry, I'll just straight baton.
Aye.
You have to state your name.
Hi, Jerry, Joe C. Thomas.
Ken Forman, aye.
Kim Beelen, aye.
Terrence Harvey, aye.
Edward Van Kuren, aye.
Paul Murphy, aye. Robert P. Dugan, aye.
Okay, thank you.
right version over here.
Okay, welcome back. So the next item on the agenda is, so it's an open meeting item, number 11716, Liberty Green 40B development. I will just remind everybody that we closed the public hearing at the last meeting, so tonight is just board discussion. So we won't be taking any public comment. Please refrain from making comments. Is anybody recording this? Yeah. If you could just identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
She's Brittany from the Falmouth Enterprise.
Yeah, no, thank you. Excuse me. All right. So we're going to move forward. Paul, I don't know if you have any thoughts on how the best way to approach this, or if you want to.
I think the best way to
Synopsis.
approach is to work off of the version that I submitted today that incorporated your suggested changes, which anything that was substantive is tracked.
Right.
But all of the changes that you suggested that were just sort of stylistic and grammar and of that note were not tracked, and I don't think we need to bog ourselves down in those sort of changes.
Right.
So-
Yeah, and the board just got this, so just my comments were just submitted, and they'll be discussed during this open meeting.
Correct, the
So-
board's just getting the copy of the decision
Right.
now.
But out of some of it, the board has also sent me comments that are included in this and the ones that I sent
So I
you as
think,
well.
What
so I
are
think
the
we should,
blue comments? Highlighted in blue.
It's tracked, and we'll get to that.
Well, there's no tracking to be cited. I see the track comments by.
Well, that's.
well, no, the blue is part of the tracking.
Blue is, yeah.
Oh,
like,
it is part of the tracking.
Yes, so
Okay.
there are comments, off to the side, that's how
Yeah.
the program works, but anything that's underlined within the text of the decision is something that's been changed from what I originally
Okay.
submitted.
And just to remind the public, we had asked at the last meeting to have Paul draft a decision, or we discussed it, he would draft a decision that was favorable with conditions to see if that's something we think is appropriate that we could vote on. So that's kind of where we're working off of at this point. Do you want to go straight down through them all, Paul? Do you think that's starting at
I-
procedural history?
I would do that, yes.
Okay.
Go paragraph
All
by
right,
paragraph.
so first page, procedural history.
And I don't think we need to go through,
Do you want?
what each one says. I think that if there
Okay,
are
all right,
concerns
so if
with.
somebody has concerns, so
Right.
instead of reading through them all.
Right, so just
Okay,
paragraph 1, are there any concerns?
okay, paragraph 1, any concerns? No? Paragraph 2,
That's good, just
There is-
additional findings.
Yes, you're.
You were on
your
first-
All right,
procedural
so I am
history.
missing a date on number 2. What was the December
What's
what?
the date? Yes.
I'll figure that out. I
Okay.
can't do it right now.
all right. Paragraph 3,
Project located system. I thought we should add along Main Street and Lantern Lane at the end of the sentence.
okay,
Project is located.
Well, how about we add it after 6 separate lots
The-
along Main Street and Lantern Lane?
Sure. Or, 6 separate lots that the applicant proposes to merge into 2 lots along Main Street and Lantern Lane, either place.
everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Paragraph 4. Paragraph 5. Paragraph 6. Paragraph 7. Paragraph 8. Just so the public knows, these are all procedural history, so we'll get into probably some meatier stuff and discussion. Okay, so everybody's all set with procedural history? Going once, going twice, good. Jurisdictional findings. So we'll go down 9A. Everybody's all set. B, C, D, 10A.
So D, again, this might be just
Oh, where are we
considered
going
a-
back? 9?
9D, just
9D.
considered perhaps a typo or something, or maybe not, in accordance with general law or mass general law, MGL.
It's general, I mean, it is mass general laws, but it's typical to do it as GL,
Okay.
Chapter
Yeah.
40.
You're the attorney.
And do you want to set out the 760 CMR 56 after DHCD? Or in parentheses, anything, or not? Because that is the
Yeah, I mean, it's the regulations and guidelines adopted thereunder, but I can put 760 CMR 56.00.
Okay, so now we're at
Okay,
10.
so we're at 10A. So I guess I'll just read this one out, because there have been some changes even since I think so what's the blue track change? Is that?
That looks like that's your, blue is you, red is me, at least on my version.
No, because I printed out my
Sometimes they
version,
change.
it
Sometimes the
doesn't.
colors change.
Oh, I don't have that in there.
She had a question about the date.
So
Right.
I'll read, yeah, so.
Yeah, just read it out.
At the time of the filing of the application, the number of low or moderate income housing units in the town constituted 5% of the total year-round units in the town based on the most recent publicly available copy of the DHCD subsidized housing inventory dated December 5th, 2014. The town obtained an updated count from the Department of Housing and Community Development dated March 1st, 2017, which shows a small decline in the town's subsidized housing inventory to 6.4%. Thus, the town does not meet the 10% statutory minimum. So that clarified my comment, that new language. Yeah, okay. All right, and everybody's all set with that?
Yes.
Okay. 10B, 10C, 10D, 10E.
Wait,
Oh.
not quite so quick.
Oh, sorry, well, I
mean,
thought you were,
Just take a
had your
breath
notes.
between the 10.
there's a lot to read.
There is. So where are you?
I was on 10E.
You were?
Yes.
Okay.
F. Anybody else set? G. I had a comment on this. The applicant's comprehensive permit application constitutes a related application pursuant to 760 CMR 56.03 sub 7. The board reserves its rights regarding this finding. I had a question for Paul, whether we should include something to the effect that even though it constituted a related application, we decide to move forward, something explicit to, and
Well, I mean, the fact that you are issuing a decision,
Decision,
you know,
yeah.
that is not a denial indicates that you have moved forward.
move forward. Okay.
But what this language is doing is stating that you are aware that a related
Mm-hmm.
application claim may be made by the board and that you are not giving up any rights that you may have with regard to that claim.
Okay,
So that in case there is an appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee, that you would still be indicating that you may raise that as an issue at that time.
okay. All right, if you think it's sufficient, I'm fine with that. Any other,
Just in this.
yes,
Can you briefly describe, I know you have the site, it does not constitute a large project pursuant to, what's a large project? If,
It's defined in the
Yeah, I would-
CMR 760. And
well, it says that here, but
I calculated like 384 units.
oh, okay, that's.
Right, so there is a threshold in which a project would be considered a large project that a town would not have to hear, and it's based upon the number of year-round housing units you have in a town, what that number would be. The smaller number of units in town, the smaller the large project exemption would be.
Okay, thank you.
And the more you have in town, the larger the large project exemption is. So the town definitely does not qualify for that safe harbor, based on this project.
any other concerns under number 10? No? Okay, so we're moving along to factual findings. And I'll go through these a little slower because these are more significant. Number 11.
So I did think we should be, so this currently says the project is located on property located at 556 Main Street and Lantern Lane, and I thought we should be more explicit about exactly what's involved. So the property is located on, or the project is located on properties off Main Street and Lantern Lane in Falmouth and includes 6 lots addressed 556 Main, 0 Main, 0 Lantern Lane, 4 Lantern Lane.
Slow down. Let me-
Sorry.
So currently consists of 6 lots addressed 556 Main Street?
Right, 0
Hold on.
Main Street, 0 Lantern Lane, 4 Lantern Lane.
Hold on. Typing is not one of my better skills. All right, 0 Main Street, 0 Lantern Lane.
Yeah. 4 Lantern Lane, 3 Lantern Lane, and 6 Lantern Lane. So Suri and I discussed that wording a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. So is everybody okay with those changes to number 11?
Yes.
Okay. Number 12. Number 13. I have a comment about, or a question. Do we need a finding? Okay, so number 13 is the board determines that it's necessary to include a bus pull-off on Main Street for the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority buses in order to avoid congestion and to address safety concerns. Do we have adequate, I think we did have adequate information that you had regarding how much frontage is needed for that pull-off?
Yes, it was 80 feet according to the fellow at Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority.
Okay, so I think we should probably make this a little bit more specific.
So make a specific finding that there is sufficient frontage to
Yes.
allow this
Yeah.
to be provided?
And as part of that finding, Paul, and I don't know if you wanted, I don't know if we'll have to revise some of the language, tonight, or come up with precise language, or, we're going to look at this again. But I also think it makes sense to add as part of that finding, that promotes having a bus pull off there, promotes some of the objectives of 40B of making, putting these projects where they're, it's accessible to public transportation and trying to promote that objective. And does everybody want the bus pull off and think that's a necessary component? Yes.
Yes.
I think,
that was consensus.
yeah, and I mean, frankly, for the whole area, it's beneficial, not
Right.
just for this project, but.
Were they going to put like a bus stop or something like, or?
Yeah, it would be, they'd set so the whole bus could pull in and park and not interrupt the traffic.
So how does that impact, I guess, so I don't want to say it creates a whole list of issues, but I can see, so how does that impact the sidewalk and where the sidewalk's
Oh, sure,
located?
it'd
The
be
public, yeah, it has to be
Oh, yeah.
moved.
Oh, that's-
Then, does the building have to be moved back? So all of these different things kind of are, it impacts that.
Well, that,
Diminishes some of the landscaping,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Well, and we don't want to diminish landscaping, so, does it push the whole project back?
It may mean you have to reduce a few rooms.
Yeah,
well, the first thing is, what's the road layout there, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, that's
probably
true.
wider than the pavement, so, I don't know.
can we make this finding? I mean, we can make the finding, but do they have jurisdiction over?
It's the town road, state ends further back by the median.
So is there any limit, do we have to make a finding that we request them, that they have to make application to DOT, or, what
Well,
can
if
you
it's a
make
town
and what
road, they
can't we
wouldn't
do?
need
Or-
DOT
Right,
approval.
is it town road? 28?
That
Yeah,
part
that part
of
is-
Main Street is
Yeah.
owned by the town.
And if there's a local approval process, this board is all local
Right.
boards. It grants all local approvals
Right, okay.
necessary.
And the distance stated, it was per the assistant general manager at Cape Cod
Transit.
Transit Authority.
Their buses are 40-foot long, they need a 20-foot behind and a 20-foot
Right.
forward,
And there's more
which
than
is the
enough,
80 feet.
and there's a little over 100 feet there.
Will it impact the driveway?
Yeah, does it create issues as to visibility and sight?
Distance with
Distance.
buses?
That is something, you're going to require them to submit final plans.
Right. Right.
That bus pull-off, would be something that would be shown on those final plans.
Right.
And this board can review them to make sure that it's
Right.
sufficient
And
and
we could
safe.
get referrals from engineering or whatever is necessary.
Right, you could have your traffic peer review engineer review the final plans with that particular, feature in mind, and indicate whether or not it causes a problem.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
I mean, we don't have the authority, we're concerned about this, to say the bus pull-off will be after they make the turn. In other words, the bus would have to go in, let people on and off, and then come back out.
Well, you certainly don't have any authority to tell the Cape Cod Transit Authority how they have to operate.
But they were very enthusiastic when I talked about it.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, basically, all you can do is tell the applicant, what they're required to provide as part of their
Okay.
project.
If the building gets smaller, it gets smaller. huh?
Yes, although I don't see that as
Consequence
necessarily
of this.
part of that process. It's,
Okay, so everybody's all set on that one.
I guess unless the parking area is actually going to be where the buildings are
Yeah.
now.
Okay, is everybody okay on that one?
Yep.
All right, so that was 13, so 14?
Okay, so the
Oh,
next
you're all over this one.
several, 14, 15, 16, I had some modifications, and they were complicated, so rather than try to just verbally explain it, I wrote out what I thought. we ought to
Okay.
do.
Great.
So I will pass 8 copies. 1, 2. Oh, I'll
Well,
just
you
keep
take
one.
one and pass it down.
It's easy. Duh. So if you, I'm happy to just
I-
go through them
go
if you
ahead,
want.
Ken.
So the first thing is, I thought we ought to establish what the board heard. Now, I originally put in the numbers from, so the first part was board testimony from the applicant as traffic consultant and traffic assessment dated, and then that was left open to be filled in, because I guess Paul felt we needed to get our traffic consultant to
Yeah, and I still have not heard back from her with
Chime
regard to that
in.
information.
That the project was expected to result in approximately, and again, the number of vehicle trips, we're waiting for our traffic consultant. I know what they said. They said 57 vehicle trips, 11 entering and 46 exiting in the morning. And similarly, approximately the number of vehicle trips entering and exiting total in the evening during the weekday peak hour. Okay, so we're establishing that first. The traffic assessment concludes that there will be a total, and then I added a total of, and what they had said in their traffic study was 76 vehicle trips daily. This will result in an increased average, again, this is based on their study, but these can be filled in by our consultant. Average weekday traffic of blank percent on Main Street. Traffic study assumed that 95% of the traffic flow will exit from Lantern Lane south onto Main Street. I believe that's correct. So that's 14. Then 15 becomes, the board finds that the intersection of Lantern Lane and Main Street is currently operating at a level of service F. Based on this information and on local knowledge and public testimony of seasonal traffic patterns and local concerns of traffic congestion on Main Street, the board finds that a substantial increase in traffic flow north through Lantern Lane onto Dillingham Avenue may occur unless improvements are made, not mad, to the intersection of Lantern Lane and Main Street. And then 16, the board further finds the addition of a turning lane exiting Lantern Lane onto Main Street is necessary to improve traffic flow and reduce queuing. The board finds that such improvements will discourage traffic flow northward through the development, from the development through the residential section of Lantern Lane. So those were my thoughts about how we could improve that.
I think, Yeah, I think that's great, Ken. I think that kind of sets us up, obviously, for conditions which we're not really at yet. But in terms of
Right.
improvements to the intersection, which I don't think are in this current draft. I wonder if 16, I know we have a condition relative to, I think it's a condition, speed bumps on their property, so maybe we could incorporate that into 16, because we're talking about turning lane, exiting Lantern Lane, and then maybe after, and reduce queuing, maybe something in the board further finds, or in addition, that the addition of 2 speed bumps over the portion of Lantern Lane that bisects the property or the project, however you want to say it, will discourage or slow down traffic, or whatever we want to say. But I think that's probably a good location for it.
Okay, so just make a note that speed bumps go in here somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was to reduce really the speed onto
Speed.
that lane. Oh,
Well, and discourage cut.
well, you discourage.
Discourage cut through.
This again for my own
Yes.
lack of, shouldn't we define what level of service F is, or per something? What is level of service F? It's in the file.
Yeah, it's a standard traffic engineer
Okay.
grading. It's
It's level of service based on the amount of traffic in and out.
right, it's
Okay,
the
so
American
it's a generally
Association of
accepted
State
term.
Highway Transportation Officials.
Does anybody else have any comments on what Ed was, or, excuse me, Ken had commented or offered? I think those are good changes. Okay, so then that brings us, okay, so that brings us now to, we're gonna go off the old numbers, just for sake of clarity, but with the understanding these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want, sure.
Did your number?
Said, otherwise I'll get very confused.
Oh, okay, great. So, 16,
It's now 17, yeah, on Ken's thing?
Yes, but
but we're going.
We're going to keep
off the
calling
old.
it 16
Oh,
for
okay.
now, though.
Yes. So, okay, 17, 18.
So
Yes,
18, I think we
Has
want to
changed, right.
establish what the number of spaces that they're requesting be allowed and what the requirement is. I think there's
Yes.
some confusion whether it was 162 or 166.
Based on the bedrooms, it's 165. And
165.
my figures and his figures matched,
Okay, and how many are they asking?
156.
156.
So the applicant proposes to construct 156 parking spaces for the project, which is not in compliance with the Falmouth zoning bylaw, which requires 165 parking spaces. That's how it should read.
yes.
Yep.
And the applicant has requested a waiver to allow approval of the project with 156 parking spaces. The board finds the applicant may lose parking spaces in the proposed garage if larger additional support, I would say columns rather
Yeah.
than poles,
Yeah.
Definitely columns, they're columns.
are needed. The board finds that 156 parking spaces are sufficient for the project, but any further reduction in the number of parking spaces shall constitute a substantial change pursuant to 760 CMR 560511. Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And everybody's okay with
So,
that
so just to
finding?
explain
Yes.
what that
Yep.
means, so that if, for some reason, when they go to construct, and they need columns that are either larger and they're reducing parking area, or if they need additional columns, that's going to wind up in a reduction in the number of parking spaces, they're gonna have to file a request for a modification with the board, and the board's gonna schedule a public hearing. So the board's gonna first make a determination that the modification request is substantial. You have to do that, and you have to give written notice. Once you do that, then you schedule a public hearing, and you take testimony, and you look into whether or not reduction below 156 parking spaces is adequate.
Presumably, this would happen before they actually started construction.
Correct. Yes, I don't think that they're gonna construct it and then realize they need
Oh,
another
my God,
column.
there's 157.
It should show on the final
154.
plans that the board has to
Correct.
review prior to the issuance of a building permit.
So we'll be aware of it before.
We'll be aware of it, yes. We're pretty sure it's going to require columns.
Right. Yeah, because right now there's no column shown, right?
Which
They might
means-
need some structure to support that.
It definitely will.
Yeah.
Even the double T's in there, the roof of a parking structure, double T's that are reinforced with rebar,
Mhm.
that can only withstand so many stories. Going back to my old days of construction.
Okay, so everybody's okay with that part?
Yeah.
Number 19. I had a comment.
Is that right, Paul?
What's that?
Like X percent. So I just had, so this was just a wording preference. So right now it says on-site amenities will include an in-ground pool and a small children's play area. Approximately blank percentage of the site will be disturbed as part of construction, with the remainder being open space. I think from my perspective, and I don't know if the board shares this, I think it's easier to say only X percentage of the site will be open space, because I think they're disturbing virtually the entire site.
Right.
And so I want to word it such that if this is approved or granted, we're really capturing, not that there's
Well,
very
instead of,
minimal
instead
open
of saying
space.
disturbed, will consist of impervious surfaces.
So
That's sort of the difference, either it's an
Yeah.
impervious surface or it's open.
Right.
It's non-impervious surface.
Right.
So 19 refers to the pool and the children's play area, and happens to incidentally reference the open space. And I thought we should have a separate finding regarding the lot coverage that's being proposed, because, they're proposing, if I remember correctly, 77% total lot coverage.
I think it's easier just to put the lot coverage instead of open space, because I don't see it as open space.
Right.
I see it as lot coverage with a little bit of landscape.
Right, so they're proposing 77% total lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking. And I don't remember the number for the structure, but it's
So why don't we just
not all that much less.
switch the focus to pervious surface and impervious surface?
Right.
So approximately blank percent of the site, and I will get that number from Brian, I spoke to him today, will consist of impervious surface, with the remainder consisting of pervious surface.
Right. Now, and the reason I think it's important to put the finding in there is that, well, at least for me, my inclination is not to grant the waiver for total lot coverage. They're locating most of their parking under the building. The building certainly can exceed the allowable lot coverage, but I don't know why they need then also to exceed total lot coverage.
Well,
I mean,
if
it's
that's-
very clear when you look at this plan, there's an excessive amount of pavement, very little landscaping. So total lot coverage, I feel, should be cut back. It's 70% is allowable.
60%.
Well, 60% in the R.
Right.
It's 70% in the BR, I believe.
Oh,
Because I think
I think it's 60%, unless this is outdated, I'm looking at it.
What, you need to look in the bylaw to see what's allowed in 240, it's
Yes.
240-240,
This is the zoning table that's on there.
I can't remember.
It
so. It
says
depends,
60%,
because
yeah.
they've straddled two districts, right?
240 what?
240-240H,
I think it's H, I think so.
I got J.
So their waiver request says that it's a 60% allowed, and they're
Yeah,
proposing
right.
77%.
Right.
And part of the property, obviously, the rear is in,
And the RC is
40%.
40%. Yeah, RC is 40.
so even allowing them
Right.
60% is still significantly more than 40%,
Well,
if you looked at it together.
What you're doing, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a
Yeah.
little bit, because you're talking about the waivers, and those are
Yes.
at the end of the
Right.
decision. But if you deny waiver for the lot coverage with building and with structures and other pavement, what you're doing is saying that they have to have less parking.
Or pervious parking area, I think is what he's getting at.
Well, I mean, so if you wanted to structure it as that, I mean, that's a separate issue. But, I mean, essentially, if you're telling them they can't have that much impervious area, and obviously the building coverage isn't going to change, what that means is they're gonna lose parking area, and therefore they're gonna need a bigger waiver of parking if you're telling them that they can't have that parking,
Let's say
that
they
area
pro-
for parking.
Let's say they propose pervious parking.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I mean,
one,
that's,
So then, that's one way to do it, to say that,
you know, for example, in the townhouses in the back or wherever,
Yep.
use a shell driveway.
and that's certainly one approach.
But I just think,
it's expensive.
my point,
It's also difficult for maintenance.
my point only is,
The plowing and stuff.
what we
That's why they did it,
want,
with the capability of plowing
but
and
my,
storage of snow. I think that's one reason why they did it, probably.
my point is, there's a lot of asphalt, and I think we need a condition that lays, that, or not a condition, a finding that points that out. That's all,
Okay.
right here, with an eye towards the fact that
All right,
we
so
may,
let's see.
later on, make some conditions that reduce that lot coverage in some way.
The other thing to keep in mind is that we just required a finding that there's going to be a bus turnoff, which may add additional,
Yeah, that's not gonna
Asphalt.
add a
That's
whole
right.
lot, but yeah. Most of that's gonna be in
public right away.
public right of way. But I guess, I'm just saying, what struck me as odd is that we were talking about the pool and the percent of disturbed of open space, but we haven't talked about the total lot coverage anywhere yet, so I just thought that.
All right, so,
Yeah.
how about a finding that says the board found the total amount of impervious area is excessive, and that the applicant shall incorporate pervious pavement into the design of the project to the greatest extent practicable.
Rather than to the greatest extent practicable, can we specify that
Well,
60%? Whatever gets it down to 60%.
So, you know, it's gonna be complicated.
Is that
I'm
too-
not sure you can, the board hasn't, they never asked Brian to give you a calculation to look at that. I don't know if they can get to
At a meeting,
that amount.
Okay.
Impractical is a,
that was something we had to discuss to let them rebut.
Well, there's gonna be, well, one thing we did
Well, again,
discuss.
so you would have a review of final plans again, and if they're showing, you know, extremely minimal amount
Right.
of pervious pavement, you're not going to accept those plans, and you're gonna go back to them and say, you need to include these areas here as well with pervious pavement.
One thing we did discuss was the setbacks, right? And if we deny the for example, if the 5-foot setback requirement, if that were, you know, if that is 10 feet, that's gonna increase by quite a bit the amount of pervious surface they have. So it's not, you know, it's not clear what the net result is until we get a revised plan, as you point out. But I just thought we ought to talk
Okay.
about it.
I guess I'm still confused that if we want impervious parking to resemble open space, don't we accomplish that by saying all runoff has to be retained on site? No. I mean, because,
You can accomplish that with dry wells and impervious paving.
yes, but I got lost in the pervious definition. I'm not sure what we're trying to get at. Reduce the
Trying to
parking?
reduce total lot coverage, not reduce parking, but reduce the paved surfaces. And he's suggesting over near the townhouses and like that,
I'm just saying that's one way it could be done.
Right.
I'm not saying that's how it should be
just
done.
explaining.
It's, I mean, another way to do it is that buildings get a little smaller, which they might do if you're denying the setback waivers. That could be quite substantial.
Still to come, still to be discussed.
Yeah, the setbacks is further down.
Yes. Okay. So everybody's okay with that for the time being? And obviously, we're going to be reviewing. it.
Right, I'm
So,
just saying,
yeah.
that, you know,
I think
at
that
least
makes
lay out
sense,
what
yeah.
they are arguing they want in here, because we haven't talked about that as a finding yet, you know, that they want to exceed the allowable lot coverages by, you know, So 77% is proposed, 60% is allowed.
Well, he can simply change that last sentence, you know.
I just think it should be a separate finding.
Yeah.
Then the pool's
Oh, I see what you're
a
saying.
I think
different
it should be
issue. The pool is
separate.
a different issue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, yep.
So should we move on to the pool? On-site amenities will include an in-ground pool and a small children's play area. Do we need to be more specific about that, or is everybody okay?
And a pool house.
Oh, and a proposed pool house as
Well,
well.
that's part of the structures, it's not part of an amenity, but it doesn't do that in the,
So,
In
in-ground
place.
pool with pool house?
In-ground pool, comma, pool house.
Hours of operation, is that a condition or?
That's a
we're not
condition.
there.
We're not there.
We got a long ways to go, Jerry.
No, I was just trying to think of some of the concerns that were raised.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to make any more findings about that? That's what's proposed. Is it adequate in size? We had talked about that during the hearing. I mean, I guess some of that goes to conditions, who can use it, hours of operation, things like that. Okay. So maybe I might look at that in a little more detail, review my notes. Number 20 is landscaping. So, right now, I'll just read it. The board finds that the landscaping proposed by the applicant, this has changed since the first draft. So, the board finds that the landscaping proposed by the applicant is insufficient in light of the significant site disturbance that the project will entail. It is the board's determination that additional landscaping along both Main Street and Lantern Lane is necessary. In addition, given the proximity of the parking garages and structures to the side property boundaries, the board finds that the proposed 18 to 24-inch shrubs are substantially undersized and inappropriate to provide sufficient buffering for visual light and noise impacts. That was kind of just my drafting last night. I'm sure that there's a lot of other issues with the landscaping that we might also want to add there. And I said, should we make a finding as to the types of trees, evergreens that should be included on the side, whether there should be screening trees? I mean, how detailed do we want to get? And I guess we could put that in conditions.
Yeah, I
too.
mean, you can go with the detail in the condition. This
Okay.
is just a finding.
Does anybody want to add anything to that finding, or is everybody on board with that finding? Because I think, as drafted before, it was more, I think, positive about the landscaping, and I did not feel positively about the landscaping. So.
I would say the size and proximity. I would add the word size.
Okay. Given the size and proximity of the parking garages and structures.
Okay?
Okay. 21. 22. 23.
So
Oh.
22,
Yes.
I included the finding, that the board finds there's currently a significant lack of year-round market rate rental housing in town.
Yes.
So I think that's an important finding for this board to make, because it's going to be supporting your condition that these cannot be seasonal rentals.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's just, yeah, okay. 23. 24. 25.
No, wait, there was
Sorry.
quite a bit of change here between what was the earlier version and this, I think. Because in the earlier version I have, the board acknowledges concerns raised by the abutters.
You're on 26.
Oh, okay. No wonder it's so different.
I think there's just a numbering change,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
So 26. I think this is, might be a good one to read out loud. The board acknowledges concerns raised by abutters and other interested parties about the project's potential incompatibility with abutting residential uses, including concerns related to increased traffic and parking demand. The board also has significant concerns regarding the incompatibility of the project as proposed with the town's long-term planning interests, particularly given the property's location within the BR zoning district. The board has addressed these concerns by the imposition of appropriate conditions. The board further finds that conditions detailed below appropriately address these matters of local concern in a manner that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. Is that language, when I had read that, is that language that you typically
So
use?
what this is doing is essentially stating that even if conditions that this board is imposing renders the project uneconomic, this board is making the determination that those conditions are necessary.
Okay.
And the local concerns that support those conditions outweigh the regional need for affordable housing. That is the standard.
Okay.
If there is an appeal, that's exactly what they will look at, is whether your conditions, if they render the project uneconomic, are necessary to protect local concerns that outweigh the regional need for affordable housing.
Okay, so this is an important condition. And the board finds that the conditions imposed below address local and regional housing needs while properly protecting valid issues of local concern. All right, so everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
And I'll just read, I think 27, I had some changes to as well. The board finds that the design of the project does not meet the municipal planning needs of the town. Specifically, the board finds that the project will have a negative impact on the town's planning efforts regarding the BR zoning district along Main Street due to the applicant's refusal to design the project in a way that integrates the development with the existing commercial nature of Main Street. The board finds that the applicant also refused the suggestions of the board and its peer review consultant to design the project in a manner such that even if the project were wholly residential, it maintained the appearance of a development that integrates with the existing streetscape of Main Street.
So that's another one of your important findings.
Yeah.
So, presuming again that there is an appeal of this decision and you wind up at Housing Appeals Committee, one of the bases for upholding your decision is local planning concerns. So you do want to tie this to what the local planning concern is. That is, it's not, the success rate on defending decisions and conditions based upon local planning efforts isn't great, but it's not zero. There are cases that have been upheld based upon those planning concerns. So in this instance, the board has imposed, and we'll get to those in a little bit, there's a number of conditions that are being imposed having to do with the design review that was done by the board's peer review consultant, Glenn Fontecchio, where he suggested certain revisions to the area along Main Street to make it at least appear as though it's integrated with Main Street, and also a stepping back of the upper stories to sort of reduce the looming features of the project. So what we're looking to do is to tie those conditions into issues of local concern, which specifically is the municipal planning efforts. So that's the purpose of that finding.
And these findings are so, I just want to say for everybody here, the findings are so important because I think obviously, and we're making findings that the board's concerned about certain aspects of the project. And so the idea is to, if we decide to grant, to condition it such that it addresses local concerns
To the
best of our
greatest
ability.
extent practicable, I mean, obviously, there will be many who think that simply denying the project will be most consistent with local concerns, but then you lose your ability, to try to condition the project in a way that at least minimizes your downsides, and the likelihood of successfully defending a denial generally is pretty low, and I don't really see any issues here, that would give you an increased odds in that circumstance than, your average 40B development.
Right, so the concern is we deny that if the developer was to appeal that denial,
Right,
and
then you
that
wouldn't
was
have,
overturned,
you wouldn't have conditions, such as.
it would be the
what would
initial
be-
project.
Correct. So you wouldn't have the opportunity to, require greater setbacks, you wouldn't have the opportunity to require the bus pull-off, you wouldn't have the opportunity to require the stepping back of the second floor, you wouldn't have the opportunity, which will come up later, with regard to the seasonal rental, all of that stuff would be gone, because
Right.
you've got a denial. And therefore, there are no conditions, and when the Housing Appeals Committee issues a decision, after it overturns a decision of a local board, it imposes, 4 or 5 standard conditions, and none of which, would really be of significant concern to the board,
Right.
and certainly not of significant protection to the town.
Okay.
And the
I
next
think
few
that's important,
findings
yes.
also address
Touch on that.
and address the concerns of the board.
Okay, so we should move along. So 28. Is everybody okay with 28? This, I just think, and Paul, maybe we can work on some of the language, but, so it's, and I don't know, maybe it's just us looking at it later, but the board finds that the examples shown by its peer review consultant Glenn Fontecchio, contained in his April 3rd, 2017 letter, depicting either retail space or amenity space designed to appear as retail space along Main Street, replacing garage area, is consistent with the town's municipal planning efforts for this area of Main Street located within the BR zoning district. The board's goal is to prevent the structure from appearing disconnected from Main Street in an area that serves as the corridor into the historic downtown area. I think the language I want to address is for the conditions and how
okay.
we
Yep.
make that.
Right, and the reason it's,
Are you talking about the letter from?
Yeah, I just want to be
Yes,
specific
Councilman.
as to what, no, I will talk about that.
in
but I-
terms of
yeah.
what Glenn Fontecchio wanted to
Yes,
see.
exactly what he showed and how we can
Right.
ensure compliance.
And the reason why it's drafted this way is I think that if there is an appeal, and the decision and a condition simply required a retail component, and that was it, they're gonna be able to show that that is likely to render them uneconomic. And that they're gonna argue that we just simply didn't have the right to force them to enter into a retail development when they didn't have an intent to conduct a retail development. So I wanted to make it so that it leaves that possibility out there, because I do think that that's a better result for the town. But if they're not willing to do the retail, at least they need to, do what Glenn had suggested and make it at least appear as though there's a retail, and that it actually does integrate, with Main Street better than simply having a parking garage fronting on Main Street.
Yes. Ken, I hear you.
Well, I'm just trying to kind of catch up here. Yeah, I mean, I thought another point to make is that serves as a historic downtown area. The goal is to prevent the structure from appearing disconnected from Main Street in an area that serves as a corridor. I thought another goal is to provide suitable amenities for the residents of the property.
And in this instance, this condition is really, this finding is really geared towards that municipal planning defense. It's not, it's nice to have additional amenities, but they already have a pool, right, in the children's play area. It would certainly be a nice amenity if they had an exercise area or something along those lines out in the front as well. But the thrust of this finding is not really towards what they could do if they added additional amenities. It's what the town is looking for with
Yeah.
regard to its municipal planning.
I'm just, and so, I mean, maybe it doesn't belong confounded in here, but I thought.
So we
part
have the
of
finding above,
Part of the value of the
was it
commercial,
15 or 16?
of the commercial component is that it would also potentially serve the residents of the building. You know, if there was a coffee shop down there, you'd walk down.
Sorry,
and get
19.
coffee.
So 19 talks about amenities that are on site. We can certainly add to that finding that additional on-site amenities, the board finds that additional on-site amenities, would be preferable or desirable, something along those lines.
That could be housed in commercial space, which would be consistent with the BR
Right.
zoning. If you want to make a note of that, maybe
Yep.
that would be the place to put that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I'm guessing that, that the hack wants to think you're interested in serving the people who are going to live in this structure.
Of course.
Building.
We are interested.
Well, no, there are decisions that do take a look at whether or not there are sufficient amenity areas. I don't think that they are below that threshold. But it doesn't hurt to have a finding that, hey, by the way, since we're suggesting you add amenity space, it really is something that will help your development.
Right.
Just move Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. With a drive-through.
Yeah, we've got the garage.
Yeah, the garage is a drive-through.
Yes, it's just a wall, they could drive right across the center.
All right, so
29.
we can always, yeah, revisit that. 29, 30,
I had a quick question on that one.
sure.
I had thought a number of the neighbors or local concerns was along with the lack of a shadow study. I know we requested it, but there was, from what I remember, and I wasn't at all the meetings, I think a lot of the residents, local concerns with the shadow study. It relates to the mass of the building and other things.
It's in 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Says the
this
reduction
finding
in-
addresses that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the board finds that the reduction in the height of the proposed structures along Main Street and the existing residential buildings abutting the project, as suggested in the April 3rd, 2017 letter from Glenn Fontecchio, is necessary to address the impacts associated with the proposed height and reduce setbacks for the structures. The reduction in height adjacent to Main Street and the existing residential uses is particularly necessary given the refusal of the applicant to provide the board with a shadow study depicting the impact of the proposed structures upon Main Street and the abutting residences, despite the repeated requests of the board that the applicant provide such shadow study.
But that also implies that we had locals asking for it as well.
Well,
It
I
wasn't
think,
just the
isn't
board.
local concerns is more, is it a term of art?
It
Well, I
is.
asked
We've
that,
got to
yeah.
develop into what the municipality is looking for.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
just,
Well, what, do you think that's
I guess I'm asking. I'm new to-
deficient in any manner? Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess you could say we have all the right to ask for it even if none of the residents wanted it. Local residents.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. You want us to put something in it that the abutters have issues with it.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to help in any 40B project.
Okay.
I mean, the board takes everything into consideration, but
I mean,
the HAC isn't going to look at that. HAC is going to look at,
What HAC is going to look at is that the board requested this, it was reasonable in requesting it, and it wasn't granted.
Okay, I,
I mean, that's the purpose of this finding, is to, in mentioning that, is to state that the stepping back of the massing on the upper stories is being done, partially, because you don't know what the impact of the shadows will be, because they refused to give you the study that you requested.
I withdraw the question.
oh, no,
So I
that's
did
okay.
have a small change in wording.
Yeah.
So in the fourth sentence down, address the impacts associated with the proposed height, instead of saying and reduce setbacks, because if we deny the setback waiver, we won't have reduced setbacks, and massing of the structures.
Proposed height and massing.
Well, I mean, I'm presuming you're not denying all of the setback. There are a number of setback requests, waiver requests.
Can we put a star next to this
I
and
just-
go back to it? Because obviously the whole board needs to come to a
Right.
consensus about.
But in any case,
Yeah.
this just gets rid of that as an issue, because I actually think the bigger issue is the fact that it's one massive single building. You know, the reduction in height adjacent to the existing, given refusal shadow study. Yeah, so I mean, if you just,
I'm okay with that change.
I just, I want to, the board to understand what the impact would be, if it is denying waiver requests. What I don't want the board to do is to do all of this work to craft a decision that protects the interest you're looking to protect, instead of just simply an outright denial, and then back yourself into it by denying waiver requests that would essentially be a denial. And so, you know,
There's plenty of room in this project for denials and still having them build a very large project. So I'm not personally, from my perspective, that worried about it.
I mean, in areas where we're talking about constructability concerns that have been addressed throughout this hearing, and whether or not they have enough room, I think a denial of a waiver request, you know, is on much more solid ground than in areas where you're simply saying, we don't like granting a waiver request here, therefore we're going to deny it. So I think you want to be careful in how you address those concerns with regards to the waivers. So I don't think it should be a blanket, we're not granting any waivers for setback waivers, no.
I think that we have to take them one by one.
Right.
But I also don't want to feel handcuffed, which I think I do a little bit. I mean, I think the denial doesn't make sense based on my understanding of the law. This is obviously a project that is so beyond what we have approved since I've been on the board in terms of 40B projects. I think that there is room, given that there's so many waivers requested. I mean, I do tend to agree with Ken to some extent. I don't want to feel like we're being railroaded here. And so I think we have legitimate concerns about some of these things. And I think that's why we need to look at the waivers one by one. And maybe some of the waivers, the shadow study, you know, if they had provided it, we wouldn't have a basis. But I agree with you. I hear what you're saying.
But also understand that
Yeah.
stepping back of the buildings as proposed
Yeah.
by Glenn is an alternative to requiring an
It's
additional
helpful,
setback.
but it's, you know, still one massive building, you know, that is at least 25 feet or 30 feet high, within 5 feet of the boundary. So, which, you know, they can't even get a reasonable ladder or scissors lift in there to
So again,
maintain.
If we're talking about areas where we have concerns with regard to whether they can actually construct it and maintain it without encroaching upon abutting property, that's a separate issue. But again, and if that
All I'm
is the
saying is
case,
here, I don't want to pin our finding on the fact that it's the setbacks. If we then go and say later on that.
all I'm saying, so in some instances, maybe there's a 20-foot setback and they're asking for 5 feet. And if you say 10 feet, you're still granting a setback waiver, but you're not granting the entire setback waiver.
Yeah.
But so then but there is still a waiver, and therefore that finding would still
You have to
be.
go waiver by waiver.
Yes.
And
Yes.
determine this.
But I'm not going to waver on that.
I'm not going to waiver on waivers. So, all right, but we'll mark that as maybe one to follow up on. I forget which one I'm marking on here.
30.
30, okay. All right, so 31.
Goes right to your
Goes-
setback
yeah.
question.
The board finds that the proposed side yard setback of 5 feet is inadequate to address local concerns. Such local concerns include the impact to abutting properties and ability to construct and/or maintain the structures without trespassing and encroaching upon abutting properties.
Right, so this is there exactly to give you that support for a waiver denial or a grant of a waiver that is not as extensive as requested.
So just so we're making sure, that 5-foot setback, which 5-foot setback are we talking about?
We're talking about the townhouse.
They have a 5-foot setback to the townhouses?
Townhouse has a 3-foot and a 5-foot on the east side.
There's
Right.
there's a 3-foot setback from Lantern Lane.
Right. Well, it's a side yard.
There's a 5-foot setback adjacent to 5 Lantern Lane. There's a 5-foot setback on the, I guess, western side of the property for that large building.
They changed that.
Oh, did they? I'm looking at old plans.
You should be looking at the one that was.
I'm looking at the ones that were my side, that I can fit in the binder.
Look at the ones.
Did they reduce any further? And the proposed pool house I show as 5, unless that's changed.
You're not looking at.
Because these were what I rolled for.
Oh, what's wrong?
That's Bogosian.
Those aren't
That's
gonna
not right.
They're really wrong.
Want to look at the Goshen again?
Easier.
think on the westerly side, it goes down 3 feet at the very end.
Well, and that's
That's
the
on
other
the
thing. I
easterly
mean,
side.
there's been plans submitted, and then there were the recent plans submitted where they proposed to make architectural changes,
which
which further encroach. So
Right.
we need to make a decision as a board, which, I mean, they're gonna be changing all these.
well, so there's going to be a list of plans that are the operative plans.
Right.
Right, so those are what you'd be ruling on. I'm presuming that the recent submittal was dead on arrival, where
Right.
they actually increased their setback violations.
By changing the facade, which was their answer to your concern about.
That's what they do it instead of doing the stepped back approach that Glenn had suggested.
So there's another
I didn't
issue
realize Glenn was
on
here.
the
I
setbacks.
didn't even realize Glenn was here.
Did you not see that?
No, I didn't see it.
It's an issue that Sari pointed out to me when we were looking at this. I don't know if we've addressed it. Maybe we haven't, I've already forgotten.
Moving around.
What's the front yard?
That's,
Main Street.
I sent you that the board needs to make a finding that the 240-.
So there, I think
Yep.
before we get into this part, there needs to be an inserted finding defining probably 31, right? I mean, the way I wrote it was, under zoning bylaws 24013 and 24068A and B, the front yard shall be frontage along Main Street.
No, it should be pursuant strictly to 240-13 definitions, yard, comma, front. The board takes on the authority of the building commissioner to determine the front property line to be Main Street.
Something like that.
Okay.
okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Because we need to make a finding as
So
to,
with regard to this finding, I mean, I think we can address the concerns that have been raised here throughout, which is to simply make a finding that any proposed setback, 3 feet to 5 feet, is inadequate. Doesn't matter if it's a front yard setback, side yard setback, any setbacks that are between 3 and 5 feet are not enough. And then local concerns include impact to abutting properties, ability to construct and maintain the structures without trespassing and encroaching upon abutting properties.
But you
That
know-
then sets you up to require a minimum setback everywhere of 10 feet or whatever.
I think that he's trying to explain that the frontage,
Well, I understand, but that,
it's a corner, you have 2 front yards there. so
a
lane to
separate,
lane is-
what I'm saying is that will be a separate question. But I
Right,
think
so-
that's a question that really you can address in the waivers.
well, why don't we just address it here and say, we find that the front yard is along Main
So
Street?
you want to have a separate finding.
Yeah, because I think the standard for setbacks might be different. Main Street is part of this business redevelopment where we want to encourage pedestrian, I mean, that's part of the goal of that was pedestrian
Streets.
friendly streetscape, and we might want a larger setback there.
The fact that you want a larger setback doesn't mean that you get to require a larger setback, even if you can tie it to a zoning provision that would
They meet it anyway.
allow.
It's-
If they meet it, then it doesn't really matter. It's
I know, but my argument is, look, we can require it, and then it's up to them to show why they can't do the project then.
Well, it's not. The time for them to show why they can't do it is past. You can't take any new information. So if you're going to require something or deny a waiver, you want to be able to have a basis for it.
Well, that's
It's
the
something that you
basis.
can tie to a local concern.
That is a local
That
concern.
once they say this denial of the waiver or whatever, if renders our project uneconomic, you can come back with, well, that's fine, but we have a local concern that outweighs the regional need for
It is
affordable housing
part
with regard to
of the
this
BR
issue.
district that we had this pedestrian-friendly streetscape, and new projects going in there have all conformed.
And that's fine, but they haven't been Chapter 40B developments. So what we want to do is everywhere that you are imposing a condition that impacts the economic viability of the project or denies a waiver, therefore impacting the economic viability of the project, you want to have a local concern that backs up your waiver, denial, or condition.
Right, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, the concern in the front yard might be different than the concern in the side yard.
In a
One might be
business
related
redevelopment,
to-
Setback is 20 feet.
It's
too.
20 feet. One might be
Maybe
related,
they get, do they not? The front yard setback?
I'm not sure they quite.
Yeah, so the 5 foot, not to get, but the 5 foot is, I mean, that building, I think it's building 2 on lot A. That's still at 5 feet. That rear townhouse is at 5 feet and 3 feet. The proposed pool house is still at 5 feet. It looks like that could be shifted pretty easily too. So I think Paul's suggestion about, saying, 5 feet isn't going to work,
Right, so I mean, I think if you impose
Anything less than
simply a
5 feet.
minimum of 10 feet,
that gets us
that addresses
better
your
than-
constructability concerns. And I think it is supportable. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to be a successful basis at Housing Appeals Committee, but it's more successful than simply an arbitrary increase. But there are maybe other areas where there are concerns that say 10 feet isn't enough, and that you want 15 feet. And with regard to the frontage on Main Street, that might be where you are saying
That's why we want
that
to
this is a
establish.
local concern, not based upon impacts to neighbors or constructability, but compatibility with our municipal
There you
planning
go.
efforts.
So that's where I'm coming from, and then, yes, in other parts of the project, the front yard setback might be less.
Right. But here on Main Street.
But I think you need to take it on building by building.
What's the front yard setback?
It doesn't say it on this plan. I don't want to read off.
So maybe, there are multiple buildings, do we need to declare the front yard for each one?
The front yard is,
Maybe? I'm going to rely on someone to give me that language.
Thanks,
Okay.
Andy.
so it is showing it as 20 feet on the original plan, which we know might be out of date.
I think it might be,
20 feet.
I think due to the facade now, because the facade, the change in the facade came out 2 feet, but you're disregarding that plan anyway.
So, I mean, my understanding is they submitted that plan as a potential alternative if the board wanted to accept it.
Right.
But it was not a formal
No.
change of their proposal.
No,
And I don't believe the board wanted to accept
No.
that change, so
it
they
encroached
just
more ways.
disregard it entirely.
Yes, let's disregard it entirely. So,
Let me ask you a question on this.
oh, can Glenn ask?
You can ask a
Okay,
question.
sure.
One of the things that I'm concerned about is with the Main Street elevation, is part of what's driving this whole setback issue, again, goes back to the use and character of the first floor. If these were active spaces, a coffee shop or something that felt like an active retail, then you'd actually want it abutting or close to abutting the sidewalk, maybe small planting areas of trees. It's the fact that
Even
it's
20 feet is close.
currently these, dead
Right.
pockets of parking, that you're trying to establish some sort of a buffer, but it's a very different character
Mhm.
than really what is trying to be established in
Okay.
the Main Street corridor. And it's a much more suburban approach to now buffer something from the street instead of engage the street.
Yep.
I'm not sure how we express that.
I think it's been fairly expressed through the way that it's written pretty much, because he talked about the retail space and how it fits into the local zoning
I guess
concerns.
going back to the question, I'd actually be, personally, my evaluation, fine with a 15-foot setback in the front if it actually engaged the sidewalk.
He didn't ask for a waiver for the front yard setback. It meets the 20-foot. Under the business redevelopment, that's 20 feet.
Okay, so we're good on that. So it's just the other.
Well, and I don't want to say, yeah, you can have 15, and then all of a sudden he's building this
Anyway.
building close.
Well, no, but you could certainly draft that to say 15 is acceptable for a structure that is engaging Main Street, whereas.
20 feet is what we did for that whole district, and it's working nicely. And that's not that large a setback, frankly.
No, look
By the
at your
time you put a
Eastern Bank.
4-foot sidewalk in there.
And a bus
And,
along.
Well,
right.
Okay, we got a long ways to go here.
Well, that's why I don't know if we'll be able to
But
get through all.
you don't have to read every single one, do you?
No. So, well, we gotta figure this 5-foot setback thing out, though.
Well, I thought he
Yeah, so we said nothing less than 5 feet. Do we want to go building by building?
Well, should we,
Well, I think that's conditions. I think you
Okay.
get to that in the conditions, not the
I
findings.
have some additional findings too I would like to discuss. Okay,
all right, so,
okay.
Losing power there?
so I might just.
Me too.
Suggest.
You, hello.
The front yard.
Fine. 31, anyone, we're moving? 32. I just thought this may be more appropriate with the other landscaping findings. Additional landscaping
Okay.
is required along Lantern Lane, including a sidewalk buffer to protect from increased automobile, truck, and pedestrian use of Lantern Lane.
Do you want to include it with the other findings, or just have it follow them?
A follow, but I think there may be some changes that we'll have to talk about in terms of additional findings too, so maybe we'll play around with the order. And then 33. All right, so I'll go through, I have a list of kind of additional things before we move on to conditions. And maybe some of these are conditions and not findings. The first that I want to hit on and include is language from the Mass Housing Project Eligibility Site Approval Letter. There's really 3 things that I think should be included as findings, and we can, obviously, you don't have to type these all up right now, Paul, if it's too much. The first that I think we should include is number 4 of that letter. It says the applicant should work with the municipality to address concerns relative to the height, bulk, mass, and design of proposed project buildings. In particular, the applicant should explore possible modifications to building elevations, including the incorporation of materials and design details intended to enhance the project's compatibility with the surrounding streetscape and surrounding neighborhood context. I think that we should insert this, that was, Mass Housing's, that was included in there.
And that the board has endeavored to.
And that we tried to pursue that, and, because we have findings that kind of lead from that.
Yep.
Number 5, the applicant should be prepared to respond to the municipality's request that they clearly, quote, demonstrate why the mixed-use approach already successful in this area of Main Street is not feasible in this instance, and/or why the number of affordable units cannot be enhanced. I think we should include that. I don't know if we have a finding. I know we have a finding that they don't want to make it a commercial space, but maybe something
But a
to be-
finding that
that we
they,
requested information.
and that they didn't. This goes
and
back
they
to that
said
other one.
It didn't include, that it wasn't part of the proposal.
so you might want to reiterate that in this finding.
They didn't demonstrate why it wasn't feasible in this instance. Maybe that was it for those. Oh. I guess some of that was how addressed to it. All right, so those were kind of the 2 major things that I wanted to get in there from the Mass Housing letter. I apologize, guys, because I have a list. I had a question about that intersection off-site work, improved sidewalks, signage. I think we discussed that at one of the hearings, that they would be okay with doing some improved signage. I think, was it relative to the,
Well, you want some directional signage,
Yes.
definitely. And then-
crosswalk, didn't we discuss crosswalk
Yes.
signage or something, I think?
Are these
Well,
conditions
putting in
or
a-
findings?
No,
crosswalk.
I don't know. Do we need a finding to
Yeah,
support the condition?
you don't need a finding to support that, so.
Okay, I'll just run through my, can we include a finding with reference to the town's March 8th, 2016 letter that, quote, "The preferred alternative for the zoning district business redevelopment is a mixed-use development, which this proposal is not." I mean, this might already be addressed.
Yeah, I think that's covered.
The town points to the adjacent properties, okay.
So you could just say both the town and Mass Housing eligibility letter.
Right.
Reference the fact that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought the town, what was good about their language was mixed-use redevelopment consistent with the town's affordable housing and economic development goals. We certainly, and I think the town certainly understands the need for affordable housing. Okay, I think that's a condition.
I don't want to get into
What the town
requesting
said.
them to provide additional affordable units.
Yeah, I don't
because-
disagree with that.
Yeah, because that's something that the regulations specifically
Yeah.
prohibit the board from doing.
Right, yeah. No, I didn't mean to.
So I would,
if that
I would
was
leave
what
that, the affordable unit issue
Oh,
out
I
of it
think
and just.
25% is,
Right.
yeah. I didn't mean, if that's why that's not what I was intending. Close garage. Okay, I think that's probably all for now. Okay, that's all for now. Anybody else have any additional findings? No? Okay. Do you want to go through conditions too, tonight?
No. I'm just an honest answer. But, I mean, if the board does.
I think we should,
Certainly, members can submit suggested changes to Serene, that you can't share them with a full board,
Right.
but they can submit them to me and I can incorporate them into a revised decision that
Well, I
can be
mean,
discussed at the next deliberative session.
I had a couple of thoughts on specific ones.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we
Let's
do
go
it
to
that
that.
way? And then we can always look,
And
Let's see where.
Glenn, on condition A4, I have some blanks in there regarding the number of bedrooms, how many one-bedrooms, two-bedrooms, three-bedrooms. Can you just review the plans and get me that information? Thank you.
So we went through that, Serene and I.
And do you have that answer already?
So I believe how it reads is, where it says, "The project as submitted consists of 54 one-bedroom apartments, 39
Hold on.
two-bedroom apartments, and 11 three-bedroom apartments. And then I added for a total of 165 bedrooms.
I have a question about that when you're,
You think 51, 39, and 11 doesn't add up to?
54, 39, and 11.
so we're saying, and I don't know if you changed this language, the project shall consist of, but we know, based on what Glenn has shown us, or that we're likely to reduce the number of units.
It
if
says
they
not
comply.
more than.
Correct.
Shall
Oh,
consist
so
of not more than.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So what we're saying is.
Yeah, gotcha.
There are issues of local concern, right, with regard to the massing and the setbacks
Right.
and all those things. You've got to address them. We're not telling you that you have to reduce the number of units, because
Right.
we're not being arbitrary and simply saying we want you to cut these units. We
I'm
have
sorry.
specific concerns.
Right.
Address those concerns however you can, and if that includes a reduction in the number of units, then that's what's going to have
Right.
to happen.
I didn't realize it said not
But you're gonna
more
have to
than.
reduce them because of the local concerns, not because we think 104 is too many.
So
Right.
one question I had was, they've given us some sort of layouts for what a typical apartment looks like, and there's a certain square footage in each of those. One strategy they might employ to meet the downsizing of the building and because of the setbacks or whatever it might be, would be to simply make the apartment smaller.
Possible. But that, so if they come in with a different set of plans that seeks to, address the conditions that the board is imposing, this board's gonna have to review and determine whether or not they are actually meeting those conditions. So not only with the setbacks, but with the reduction in the bulk by the stepping back.
But where I'm headed,
How
where
much
I'm
say do
headed
you have over
is,
the size of the apartment?
No,
None, thank you.
I mean, it's gonna be a marketability issue for them. They're not
Right.
gonna just simply cut the size of the apartment units in half, because, you know, their rental price is gonna be significantly lower. They're more likely to simply walk away.
So, so really my question was, is there any way we might acknowledge that the proposed apartments are, you know, as we've shown, look good to us, and they should, you know, stick with what they've got?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that
I don't think you want to
gets
do
you
that.
anything.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they may come up with a more efficient design, right, that actually addresses, you know, allows them to reduce the footprint, address a lot of the concerns, and keep their unit mix. And if they do, well, you know, they've addressed a lot of the board's concerns. And that's probably gonna be the best result you can get.
Is it entirely up to the board, to the proponent to determine which units are affordable versus
No, it is not
market?
entirely up to the proponent. In fact, it is up to the subsidizing agency.
So how many two-bedroom, three-bedroom, or one-bedroom?
They're gonna have to have an equal mix.
Okay,
So they can't load all of the
That's-
affordable units into the one-bedroom units.
Okay.
Yeah, subsidizing agency won't allow that. And they can't give, you know, all the best locations of units, you know, the corner units or whatever.
They can't
simply
be
to market rate
discriminative.
units. Correct.
Okay.
But we can't do something like say, okay, well, your footprint has been reduced by 20%, therefore the number of units allowable is reduced by 20%?
No. I mean, at that stage, it looks like you're simply arbitrarily reducing the number of units, you know, which is not going to be sustainable. It will not be upheld.
Okay.
All right, do you have any other conditions you want to address right now, Ken? I have.
It was mostly in the landscaping section where.
So, yeah, I mean, that landscaping,
You might be a little-
always happy to get some detailed
I felt we should
condition requests.
require certain calipers
So
at a minimum.
put them in writing exactly what you're looking for and send them over, and I'll incorporate them into the decision, and then the whole board can review it.
I'm just asking you to keep them reasonable and remember
It
that
has to be actually
8-foot diameter.
feasible.
it can't be,
Sequoia
It
is not.
can't be a 30-foot tree.
and they have to be able to maintain it on their property without trespassing onto other properties.
It's gotta be something that's commercially available.
And there was one other
Should be
section in
some
the
native as
plan
well.
Yes.
which I don't know if it ever really saw a revised plan that incorporated, and I think it's in front of, it's on lot B. This, where originally the sidewalk is shown as cutting in through the parking lot and so forth, and there's a narrow island. And I felt
The sidewalk.
there should be, the sidewalk should also extend across that. This is on the,
Adjacent to Lantern Lane.
yeah, adjacent to Lantern
So that's
Lane.
going to be a traffic condition.
Should be, I would think.
There's a little island that demarks the parking, which I felt ought to be, we ought to require a little more extensive landscaping and landscape buffer either side of the sidewalk. And
Oh, so it's a landscape.
so, you know, it's sort of a landscaping and safety
Yeah.
issue that, you know,
Right, so do we want to put it in traffic, or do we want to put it in landscape?
I'd put it in landscaping.
Okay.
you know, it's also part of the design. It's a
Put
little
it in
of everything.
landscaping.
I can send you what I thought.
Yeah, why don't you send me the language you're looking for, and I can incorporate it.
I can't,
Okay, well, I would like to send some landscaping, although I'm sure you're going to be more specific than I would ever be.
not necessarily.
This is when we need Mark Cool. He would be very specific. about
Well,
the
remember,
landscape.
depending on how tall you want the trees to be when they're, like, if
Yeah.
you're looking for
Those are
5 or
straight.
6 foot evergreens or something, then they should be 3 to 4 feet apart off center. So if you're going to be specific, be careful that it's not overdone and yet not underdone. So you might want
So
to take.
Sari, you might have recommendations.
I probably do, based on all the landscaping this board is conditioned and what I go out and inspect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So,
So I'll send it to you.
great.
No, send it to me.
Yes, that's what I meant.
So there's just a couple other conditions while we're here I just wanted to touch on, and we can certainly talk about these later too. A6, all residential units, oh, this was stupid, I added residential, that was duplicative. All residential units approved under this comprehensive permit shall be rental apartment units. Seasonal rental of the units in the project is strictly prohibited. The lease of any unit shall be for a period of not less than 12 months. I would like to see this language revised or strengthened. I know we say seasonal.
I know where you're going with this.
Is this someplace I don't want to go?
Well, no, not necessarily. So my concern, when you put in Airbnb, I mean, I don't think you want to be
We can't control that.
overseeing how the actual people who rent these units deal with it. I mean, I think we want to see that in their agreement, their rental agreement, or the
management.
management
Their
papers.
management agreement,
And that's
yeah.
something that, that the decision
Well, this
requires
is-
it to be submitted and reviewed.
This is the concern I have.
I just don't think the board wants to get into that level of minutia.
I think it's up to the board
What
to
you-
just condition the 12 months and.
But what
then
you
look at
don't
the
want is
management.
for them to set up a separate
Well,
holding company and
That's, my concern is.
do an end around. So
Right,
we can
because-
certainly look at adding language to address that concern. So
yeah.
that, the
In the
applicant
management.
or any, related entity,
Well, we usually say that these cannot be sublet either.
Well, that's, my concern is that you lease it for a 12-month period.
Can't be
The next thing you
sublet.
know, that entity is subletting it, so I put that subleases, or listing it for, Airbnb, and I get what you're saying.
We have made conditions that the units will be strictly leased through the management company and cannot be sublet.
okay?
And you can just add from any entity.
And I
that
just,
protects.
is seasonal rental specific enough? I mean, I guess if we're requiring 12 months.
Well, yeah, with regard to the lease, we're telling them exactly what, it
Yeah,
has to be 12 months or
12
greater.
months, okay.
So what we want to say about subleases?
No subleases, that all leases should be through the management company and shall not be sublet through to or through any entity. That's usually what I put in some decisions.
Yeah, I just want to make, like you said, I want to make sure there's not.
But again, there's no way we can control Airbnb. We can only condition what we can and protect it through the management agreement and through your conditions. Is that okay, Paul?
All right, B1, this addresses a question. We have that I'll give you a second, affordable units shall be dispersed. Oh, that's, I see, you already answered that, that they would be evenly dispersed among unit
Right.
size.
Yep.
We just don't specify it.
And within the guidelines of the subsidizing agency. At the end of this process, the applicant has to go back to the subsidizing agency.
With our
for
decision?
with this decision, get final approval, and that final approval will include an approval of a lottery plan, and that will include a plan that shows the identification of the affordable units.
Okay.
And whatever the subsidizing agency says as to where the affordable units will be located is final. This board can't say, no, we don't like that.
Okay. All right, I think that was really the major items.
We also talked about bike racks inside, put some on the outside, but nothing inside. Like one of the findings.
Well, the bike racks they put on the outside were very, very minimal. I think it held a total of 10 bikes.
Right.
So we had made that comment. So I don't know if you want to limit it to 10 or 12 bike racks on each, at building 1, building 2,
I think
and
on the
then,
last go-around, they did show the 3 different locations, which would be like 27. I think there were 9 units. I mean,
So are we okay with their?
no, we wanted some inside.
Okay.
Otherwise, people are going to be putting them in the hallways. Huh?
Oh, I see what you mean.
well, I think that goes
It's
to
more
the
secure to have
security
them
issue.
inside anyway. If you're a resident of the building,
Yeah,
you
you wanna-
don't, you leave your bikes outside, they're gonna get stolen.
Yeah,
So we want to add a condition that says bike racks shall be provided somewhere inside,
Within the parking
Yeah.
area.
Where's the mail?
within the parking area?
Well, within the, you know. what-
Or receptacles?
I thought they said first floor or something.
Yeah, they didn't specifically say,
That was another thing that was in the site. Seems like everything from the site eligibility letter that Mass Housing said to address, they didn't
we
respond
did
to.
ask them a couple times on
We-
where the
we
mail was
asked,
going to be,
yes.
and they
One-
weren't
one point
sure.
Said by the elevator in the
Right.
front building.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So in your findings, Kim, regarding the site eligibility letter, do you want to explicitly state it that the board asked about this and that the applicant did not respond?
Again, no, again, they did, but again, this goes to, these are preliminary plans, and
Right.
you're asking for the final plan, so you need to make a condition that the plans shall include mail
Yeah.
boxes on the interior of buildings 1 and building 2. Of course, the townhouses may get their own.
Yeah, so this is recommends. So
Right.
Mass Housing's Design and Technical Division recommends that the applicant's submittal to the municipality include information relative to site landscaping, including proposed seating areas and locations for snow storage, bike racks, and mail delivery boxes.
So these are things that you'll put in your conditions to firm up through the final plans, correct, Paul?
Correct.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't mean to.
So I just need to figure out where I'm going to put that.
All right, so
I'll
obviously.
squeeze that into a general condition with regard to the mailboxes.
Right. And it might, do you separate yours out through management and construction? I didn't. Doesn't matter.
I've got one thing to add. I don't want anyone to faint, but I have one
Wow.
thing to add. Yeah. I was just thinking, there's been a lot of talk about the proximity of these structures to the property lines, 5 feet, 3 feet. And I was just thinking, I don't know if this is beyond this board, but what about a condition erecting a fence along the property line prior to construction? I mean, some of this construction is to be 3 feet from someone's property line. If you require a fence erected prior to construction, it makes the developer, should the setback issue fail, requiring greater setbacks, they have to walk it like they can't trespass without breaking the fence, or, I just didn't know if that's appropriate. Is that beyond this board? Is trespass an issue between property owners? Is it trespass? Is it appropriate to have a fence? I
I
don't know.
think the board can condition whether
Does
they
that
want a
make
fence
sense?
or not,
It
correct?
could be for
Well,
safety
we
reasons
can-
too, you want.
Well, so,
Construction
I
fence.
mean, there's
this
two
isn't a
different types of
construction
fencing.
fence
Are you,
that you
right,
saw.
put up construction fencing, during construction, or do you want them to put up an actual fence?
Finished fence, but then that's going to get damaged.
Right,
You
you
want
don't want that up during
You want the
construction.
construction fence,
Yes,
Right.
I mean,
So
that's what,
You can certainly impose a condition that requires construction.
because
fencing.
if you were to put a
It's not
6-foot
that large of an area right now. to
stockade
do it,
fence
no.
or something like that, when they go to construct, especially building 2, that's right next to a 100-year-old house, chances are they're going to be right there.
But they'd have to
So-
repair it. Why would they want to break
How are
the
they going
fence?
to, well,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not trying
because
to
you
make it-
have so many subcontractors out there
Oh,
who are
yeah.
just gonna care less.
But,
and 9 times out of 10, a stockade fence to a rounded development is the last thing that goes up. So I suggest a construction fence, and then
Yeah.
you can still condition a stockade at the end,
Correct.
and
And-
then
and-
limited your buffering.
If you make them put up a construction fence, you're gonna know when they encroach onto the.
Sure.
property.
And do they, in terms of the, are there any studies, so I know, if somebody's doing, obviously this isn't entailed here, but if somebody's doing blasting, they have to go out and do a pre-blasting survey of, is there anything that we could impose in terms of survey before they do on neighboring properties? Because I know that 100-year-old house is a concern next door.
Well, you can definitely, oh
Can
yeah,
we
because
require a pre?
that foundation is.
demolition
Wow.
or a pre-excavation survey of neighboring properties? Is that beyond our?
Yeah, that's beyond. That's not something that's typically done for
You've got
construction
the
projects.
geotechnical, and that's specific to this site.
I think I read words in here somewhere that said that if they needed an easement, they had to go and make that happen with the above.
Well, it doesn't matter if we put that language in
Right.
here or not. If we can't authorize them to work on someone else's
Right.
property.
Right.
But they said that, I think there's some words that say they need to get that
Well,
without
there's
prior to
language in here
starting.
that requires them to do a geotechnical
Right.
review
Right.
before they're allowed to commence any construction
Right.
to prove that they can, physically do the work, without encroaching on somebody's
Right.
property.
Whether it be sheathing down or whatever.
Okay.
That's probably a good,
Right.
So do you like the fence?
yes.
Well, I think the construction fence is good.
All right, yeah, all right, that's good.
Thank you, Paul.
Sure, sure.
Nice.
I had a minor thing.
Yep,
On E11. it's good.
E11.
Yeah. Are we allowed to say no satellite dishes? I thought that was like some federal law that,
No, I don't know, it was a question. Wait, I put that as a question, did we add it?
oh,
What is that?
E11, it says
Are
no
you
satellite
talking about the
dishes.
clutter on the balconies, or are you talking
I'm talking
about?
literal satellite.
satellite
dishes.
dishes.
Like on the side of everybody's unit was the concern.
Direct TV.
Oh, I just vaguely remember that
Did
being
we
a
add that?
concern.
Can
It's
we
in
not
blue
say
here.
that?
Well, that's a liability, it's a rental anyway, but. I've
I'm not
never
saying-
seen that done.
Oh, I think that's fine.
Here it is,
Have you,
Ross.
Paul?
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
No. it's-
And it might be
Is that a
administrative.
violation
It's
of an
almost
act or anything?
discriminative.
Well, I mean, if we require them to submit a contract with a management company.
Probably,
That
Well,
should be
that
addressed
includes
in
that,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
probably have cable or Fios or whatever run anyways.
You do nice satellite dishes, they'll have direct TV here suing us. No, I'm kidding. I better not say
Some
that.
condo associations don't allow.
Correct, and they're certainly within their rights to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are some
Maybe
condo
that's what I was
associations that
thinking
don't
of.
allow you to hang an
Condo.
American flag.
But that's what he
Yeah.
was saying.
They
We'll
have
leave
the
it
right
up to
to
the
do that?
management
Are you in
agreement.
the right to do that? I don't know.
It's been
Well, there's
upheld
some
many
free-
times.
really?
Okay, then
Yes.
it's
I
the
should know
condo.
that.
Yeah.
I think that there's some free speech stuff though in the common areas.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's actually not allowed to do it from the.
I withdraw the question again.
Move on.
All right, so,
You're going to get the comments to me, and then we'll,
right.
based on the findings and the conditions,
I think
and then
one
you'll
more
discuss the waivers the
meeting.
next.
Yes.
Okay. So can we have a date? Which one did you guys, agree on? Next Tuesday or July 10th?
Did you send out the date to everybody?
Yeah,
Did everybody get
she
that?
We
always
did.
does.
We contacted all the board members to ask them if they're be available for those dates, and you're going to decide which one tonight based on Attorney Haverty's capability to turn this around.
I mean, I can get you your changes prior to the 27th. It's just a matter of when the additional changes get to me.
So let's make it for July 10th. Is that okay with the board?
Yeah.
What I would say is going to the 10th means you
might-
have to finish.
Oh, we're
Right.
finishing.
I
That's
might have a
fine.
problem with the 10th. Sorry.
She didn't get in touch with you? I thought
She did, but
That was the one I was going to fill in for
I might
anyways.
still, either the 27th or the 10th.
That's the
I
6th.
have a conflict possibly with the Dartmouth Zoning Board of Appeals that might be requesting my presence. So that might be a problem. So, if we could.
All right, that
if we
means
could-
you guys got to turn around your comments and get them to me by tomorrow afternoon, so I can get them to Paul, and he can get the draft to you by Monday afternoon. Is that okay with you, Paul?
So what do we decide on the date?
27th.
Well, I think our
Next
comments
Tuesday.
have to be out by tomorrow afternoon.
Next Tuesday, you have the meeting. It's just important that you get the draft at least
And-
24 hours in advance, so you can review it.
The plus side of doing it on the
That's some time.
27th is if there are still some outstanding issues.
We have time.
You do have the ability to
Right.
schedule another
So we
Right.
can schedule at noon, in another
whenever you
meeting.
need to, yeah.
All right, so is there a motion to continue
Work hours.
I'll make
to
the
just a
motion.
few days?
Um,
Or we don't need, do we
You don't need to
motion?
make
No, because we're
just
in
a
an
general
open
No,
meeting.
yeah,
consensus
it's-
that you'll meet.
You're still within deliberations.
At,
Oh, we do have to make a vote? No.
so at
Something you do.
6:30 on
6,
Tuesday, the 27th?
5:30?
Six, I mean,
I'd say if you can start earlier, that leaves you more time to
Right.
6,
go
Ken?
through.
I'd like to reserve that it be 6:30. I just have some,
Okay, so 6:30, Tuesday, June 27th, here in Town Hall.
Open meeting, yep.
Now I
Here?
officially-
No, it'll be
Visit
the civil defense room.
downstairs.
Civil defense room, excuse me,
So,
yes.
Tuesday, June
Officially have a
27th,
hearing every night
6:30.
next week except for Friday.
And
Well, I have a meeting every night next week now. Got
Okay,
it?
so that's it. Do we want to do the minutes of June 15th?
The 4 members are here. Mr. Dugan, if you join the table again.
Those are the ones you made comments on the front page.
If you could just refrain from,
The 3 middle members were not here, so.
I concur with the recommended changes.
Unless you want to table them until Tuesday night, the 22nd,
let's just table them.
27th.
We'll table.
Okay,
All
they're
right,
tabled.
that's everything.
You had a motion, who seconded?
Did you contact Convict Civil?